Tonight, in the wake of their summit, both President Trump and Kim Jong-un essentially are declaring victory. And North Korean news reports say the president agreed to lift sanctions. During the summit, CNN's chief White House correspondent Jim Acosta was the network pool reporter, making him one of the very few Westerners to get an up-close look at the North Korean dictator, and sometimes the only U.S. television correspondent in the room with both President Trump and Kim. Jim Acosta is back in Washington. A lengthy flight, just got back earlier this morning, flew with the president back on Air Force One. So walk us through, what was it like?
Well, it was interesting, Wolf, because the day started with the White House having a lot of jitters about us being around Kim Jong-un. In the beginning, in those pool sprays with Kim Jong-un and President Trump, I was excluded from the first couple of pool sprays. And the reason I was given is because they were concerned that Kim Jong-un had not been around American reporters yelling questions, shouting questions, and so on. And so I was excluded from those first couple of pool sprays. I registered my objections. And then we were allowed into a couple of opportunities. And when you heard me ask the president, how are things going? And Kim Jong-un, will you give up your nuclear weapons? That was when they were heading into one of those pool opportunities where I was excluded. But later on, when Kim Jong-un was just a few feet away from me, Wolf, he looked just as plump and baby-faced as he looks on TV on all those state media pictures. And my sense of it was when we were shouting questions at him or asking him and the president questions, he wasn't rattled at all and seemed fine with it. I'm not sure how much English he understands, but we at least had to attempt the question.
We have that moment when you shouted out a question, which is your job, of course, to shout out questions, especially when you're a pool reporter and people don't know. A pool reporter, you're not just representing CNN, you're representing all the U.S. television networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, and CNN. Let me play that clip.
Mr. President, how's it going so far, sir?
Very good.
What do you think?
Very, very good. Excellent relationship. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chairman Kim, will you denuclearize?
Mr. Kim, will you give up your nuclear weapons, sir?
There are print reporters there as well, but you're the only U.S. television reporter. So what was he like, Kim?
He didn't answer our questions, and I'm not sure how much English he understands. But one thing that we noticed, Wolf, is that the North Koreans were very sensitive to us being around him. He had a tight group of security officials around him at all times. He had state media representatives around him at all times. And there was one moment, obviously, I got into the signing ceremony when they signed that agreement. And, I tried to ask the president a couple of questions there. There was some jostling that went on between the U.S. press and the North Korean press. We got in perfect position to take pictures of the occasion when they signed that agreement. And then at the very last minute, the North Koreans tried to storm into the room right in front of us, and they were pushing and shoving me, my other colleagues, and some of the U.S. Camera people who were in position to take these pictures. And so they were not only sensitive to his security, but his image as well.
Tell us about that moment when the president was showing him the presidential limousine.
Well, that was fascinating. That was another one of those opportunities that, it was a host TV spray. Now, some people don't understand what the difference is between us and host TV. This was the Singapore government camera people who were allowed to witness this moment. But obviously, what we heard from talking to officials there is that Kim Jong-un was very curious about the presidential limousine, the Beast. And so the president there taking him on a tour of it. It's interesting to hear, some of the talk about how close Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un were during this entire experience. It seemed like almost a bromance to me, almost like what he had with Emmanuel Macron a few weeks ago during that state visit. They seemed to get along really well, and it's no surprise to me that afterwards the president said that he feels that Kim Jong-un is a very talented man. He was talking about how they have this excellent relationship, and I think that was on display.
Even though Kim is in his 30s, the president's probably at least twice as old. The body language that you saw, that you eyewitnessed, was pretty good.
It absolutely was. And Wolf, I was just a few feet away from Kim Jong-un, and what was most astonishing to me was here you had this young man, he's a younger man than you or I, and at the same time, you had to keep in mind as a reporter in that situation, this is somebody who has killed his own family members, somebody who runs a system of gulags in North Korea where tens of thousands of North Koreans are held captive. This is the man who is responsible for the death of Otto Warmbier and that pool spray opportunity at the signing ceremony. I asked the president, did you have a chance to ask Kim Jong-un about Otto Warmbier, talk to him about Otto Warmbier? The president didn't answer that question, but I thought in light of everything that Kim Jong-un has been accused of, what we know he's done, the fact that he has an arsenal of nuclear weapons and this expanding nuclear program, I thought we were totally justified in asking all of those questions. And I thought you know what, Wolf Blitzer and my colleagues at CNN, the other networks, they would have been pretty disappointed had I not attempted to ask those questions.
You're the representative of all the television networks. As a former White House correspondent myself, spent 7 years in those respective pools. Every fifth day was CNN's turn.
That's right.
Your job is to ask the questions. They don't have to answer them if they don't want, but if you don't ask the questions, you're going to have 5 networks who are going to be pretty upset at you. That's your responsibility. Right. It's a free press. And I'm glad that Kim began to see a little bit of that, because certainly he doesn't see that back in North Korea.
No, that's right. And he seemed to open up towards the end of this. You saw that statement that he gave next to the president. And, you know, while he did not want to answer our questions, I thought it was important from a U.S. press perspective that we make it very clear in these situations, you can be standing there with a dictator, you could be standing with whoever you want, President Trump. We're going to ask these questions, and the White House should give us those opportunities.
Good work. Excellent work as usual. Jim Acosta, thanks very much. I know you flew back with the president on Air Force One.